Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Fishlys. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a review of the new Homeworld Remastered collection. Homeworld 1 is probably my favorite game of all time. Back when the original came out, I played it for many hours. And so when I heard Gearbox finally announced its plans for the license that it had acquired from THQ's collapse, I may have got a little excited. Just a bit. With that in mind, I dove into the remaster hoping for a faithful remake. What I found? Well, let's have a look. Right off the bat, we've got to talk about one of the best aspects of this HD remake. The visuals. They are stunning. The ships look great, the backdrops have been improved dramatically, even the cutscenes have been reworked. The only letdown to the graphics is the texture quality on the large ships like the mothership. If you zoom really close and inspect it, it's a little scruffy, but nothing major. Another area of vast improvement is the lighting effects. You'll see the reflections of gunfire and iron cannons on the other ships. I cannot say I'm a fan of the UI changes. I actually prefer when I have to go to a separate menu to adjust my build queues and research options. The reason for this is I prefer the clean screen that was provided with Homeworld 1. This remaster, even when you hide the menus, they feel cluttered, and in battle situations I've accidentally clicked into the menus. Instead of sending my fleet to an attack, I've started a build queue. This is personal preference only, so make up your own mind just from what you see here. So visually the game is gorgeous. How does it stack up sound-wise? Well, this is more of a mixed bag. Gearbox found a lot of the original sound recordings for this game, and thus were able to greatly enhance the audio in many aspects. But at the same time there's some issues with the choices in the sound. One example of this is the way units are announced as they are completed being built. In the original Homeworld, all the strike craft were only announced as complete when the batch they were building was completed. Frigates and above were announced, but that's because they take much longer to build and thus are actually critical to the fleet when they come out. But as the way things stand now, get used to hearing this.
Complete. Scout complete. Scout complete. Scout complete.
Docking signal green.
Scout complete.
So let's have a look at the gameplay. For those who've never played Homeworld before, it's an RTS game set in 3 dimensions. Your mothership is your main production platform.
On our way.
Once it dies, you lose a great chunk of the ability of your fleet. Under that, you have the ability to build up to 4 carriers. Now these carriers are able to build up to frigate class sized vessels, and so are able to resupply and restock your fleet closer to the front lines. From these units you build a decent sized fleet consisting of strike craft, frigates,
Interceptor complete.
destroyers and battle cruisers, with the goal of destroying the enemy mothership. To build these units, you simply have to research them and collect the resources needed to build them. So let's have a look at the resourcing. In Homeworld 1, it was a simple task. You'd simply select your harvesters, tell them to go off and harvest. They'd keep going until the map was empty. The only thing you really had to do was keep an eye on them and make sure they weren't attacked, and provide a resource collector generally closer to their location so they didn't have to fly so far. There are issues with the new system. Whereas before the harvesters could fly around and collect asteroids at a fair distance, they are now forced to dock with the asteroid.
Exhausted fleet. Moving on.
And it seems this has caused some of the collectors to get stuck mid-flight or mid-collection.
Moving on. Local resources.
Sometimes you're able to reissue commands to fly off and harvest or dock, and other times they just seem to refuse. Hopefully Gearbox fixes this
Destination
issue
locked in.
because
That's a
it's
full
simply
load.
supply
Let's
box
take it
you.
back.
It's
Collection
not very fun
confirmed.
having to babysit harvesters all day long. Right, so that's the harvesting sorted. Let's move on to the research. For those familiar with the old Homeworld, this is a whole new system. And again, I'm not happy with this. In Homeworld 1, you had 6 research ships that could be built. They would all click together to form one research ship. Each module of that research ship had the ability to research a separate technology, or combine with any of the other 5 to speed up the research. As it stands now, this is now restricted to a single research tech for the whole ship.
Available. New capital ships
On top of
available for
that,
construction.
the research speed for the ships has been dramatically changed. The first research ship combining with the second research ship does not double your speed. It's a tiny percentage increase. It makes building more than one research ship feel pointless now. On top of all this, the research has now undergone another change. It now costs resources to research. Before it was simply time. This change, I feel, was only put in because of the Homeworld 2 multiplayer component. And I cannot understand, and this goes for many parts of this review, why Gearbox did not implement 2 separate systems, one for single player and one for multiplayer. As it stands now, all the restrictions they have to put in for Homeworld 1 ships into the multiplayer to balance it are forced on the single player, which has created many other problems, but we'll get to that. Alright, so let's have a look how the units fared in this remaster. So if you ever played the original Homeworld, you'll understand how critical the strike craft could be to your fleet. They could form the core of your fleet with heavy corvettes and attack bombers as your strike wing to hammer the enemy, or they could be your fast reaction force. Groups of them sitting around the map waiting to rush to a defense of a resource collector. Or they could delay and stall enemy movement by harassment. A few scouts set to evasive could type an assault frigate for a few minutes, giving yourself time to send in reinforcements or move critical units away from the fight. Now, all the units in the original Homeworld had 3 tactics. You had the neutral setting. In this default setting, ships would hold a loose formation to give themselves room to maneuver and evade incoming fire while attacking. Another tactic they had was aggressive. In this mode, they would shunt power from their engines to their weapons. They would stay in tight formations, making aggressive passes, spending as much time soaking the enemy in firepower on each pass as they could. This made them vulnerable to heavier ship guns, but gave dramatically increased firepower. And finally, the evasive tactic. This mode would have the strike craft split up into 2-man flight elements once the attack started. They would try and evade enemy fire, making only quick, fleeting runs at the enemy.
Interceptor complete.
In this mode, they could dodge heavy capital ships for ages, unless a lucky ion beam or heavy cannon shell impacted them. You lost a great deal of firepower in this mode, true enough, but keeping your fighters alive and in the fight could win you the day. These tactics were not set and forget. To get the most out of your strike craft, you had to swap between the different settings in the middle of a fight sometimes. So when it comes to strike craft, how does the remaster stand up? Well, when it comes to strike craft, the game's simply broken. Fighters will not work together. They fly their own paths, ignoring all others in the fight. Corvettes, on the other hand, try to fly like fighters, effectively cutting their firepower by 2/3. In the original game, corvettes would side strafe around an enemy to keep their forward-mounted guns pointing at the enemy. But now they seem to forget which side their gun's on, and they'll just fly around in a circle. The larger ships of the fleet
Friendly units.
suffer from a general lack of survivability,
Capital ship.
where battles in the original could feel like epic slugfests, with ships taking hit after hit from railguns and iron cannons,
Engage
but
capital
giving as
ship.
good as they got,
Bounty received.
and reinforcements flowing in from all sides of the map to prolong the fight. The remaster has seen all the stats of the ships changed. Frigates are now cannon fodder, and destroyers wilt within seconds when facing a battle cruiser.
Line heavy fire.
There's another change that's under the hood that most people won't see or realise is there,
Failure of losing control. We're going
and
down.
this is the way shots are calculated.
What's our damage?
Frigate lost.
In the old system,
Frigate taking
each
heavy
shot
damage.
was calculated as it flew.
Frigate lost.
It was a physics-based system.
Your targets.
Heavy
If the
corvette.
enemy fighter dodged the shot, then the bullet or shell would fly on
Wingman tighten
for a
up.
set time after, unless it got a lucky hit on another enemy, or an unlucky hit on a friendly. The ship that fired the shot would always fire to hit, but if the enemy moved or ran out of range, then tough luck. In the new system, all the bullets are RNG based. This can lead to situations where a shell has to change course mid-flight to hit the ship that it was told it would hit. It can lead to situations like the one I seen the other day, where 4 assault frigates, sitting still in spare, were having trouble hitting a stationary carrier. And carriers are not a small ship, so how they could miss that damn thing, I don't know. Really, Homeworld had a deep pool of tactics that gave this game its devoted fans, and it feels like a lot of it has just been stripped away. Now, before this video finishes up, there's some other problems I want to point out, so I'm just going to do a quick list. Number 1. Gearbox decided that the Homeworld Classic shouldn't be played over LAN and removed the functionality from a game they essentially sold as untouched. Number 2. No option to play as the Titan in the single player. This is silly. I don't care about the canon of Homeworld 2 and Cataclysm. I played all of Homeworld 1 3 times through fully as the Titani. I don't like the look of the Kushan ships. I like the Titani. Let me play as them. Dynamic difficulty for single player missions. The original game was well balanced, with the correct resources and difficulty spread throughout most of the game. The original was well paced and required excellent fleet control to prevent loss. Now the number and types of enemy ships per mission change. Have too many ships as you hyperspace in, and you'll suddenly encounter way more enemy.
Service sequence initiated.
The support frigate hyperspace. Now, they haven't removed the hyperspace from the support frigate, but what they have removed is the ability to
Resource
transport 10
injection.
fighters and 4 corvettes quickly to a new location on the map by using the dock command on a support frigate and then hyperspacing it out once all the fighters had docked. This was a great way of projecting power across the map, getting strike craft to a critical location quickly. Mine laying corvettes
Resource injection
are just
received.
broken. Instead of deploying curtains of minefields to restrict the avenues of attack the enemy may use, they now deploy a single mine that lasts like a minute. The lack of animation in the 3D models. This comes in a few different ways. A lot of the guns that used to have very strong recoil animations are now static.
Alright,
It's actually very hard sometimes to tell whether they're shooting or not. If you're zoomed up too close, you don't see the flash. The other way this shows itself is in the research ship. The Kushan research ship used to rotate around its axis at about a 30-degree angle. Now, it just sits still, doing nothing. There are many more bugs and issues still out there, and as it stands, I don't know if Gearbox will ever be able to fix them all. They have provided some bug fixes in the last week, but for things like the fighter formations, the way tactics are broken, I don't know if they'll ever be fixed properly. Okay, to wrap all this up, if you have never played the original Homeworld before, you might enjoy this game. But if you do buy it, load up the classic game that has been included with each purchase,
Got a situation.
and do yourself a favor and finish the whole story campaign in the original game. Also, to some people this may sound like the whinings of an old player, and it is, but that's only because I know this game can and was better.
Attack vector.
For those of you wondering about Homeworld 2, I can't say much about it. I simply never got invested in the Homeworld 2 story, and as such never played much of it. But from all reports I've heard, the game is fine and functional. It should be, it's based on the same engine. So in the end, would I recommend this game? Yes, I'm gonna have to say yes. Mainly because,
Reporting.
and this is a selfish reason I know, I hope this game gets enough support that Gearbox will be willing to invest the funds into a new engine that removes the RNG system, that allows proper fighter formations, that brings our tactics back. And it's not like a new player coming to this game for the first time will miss all that, as the classic games are still right there. They've been included, which is great value really.
All stations reported by the numbers.
So overall, Gearbox gets a thumbs up, but hopefully with some lessons learned. Anyway, if you're still watching at this point, thank you for sticking around for what has been my first proper game review. Like, favourite and subscribe, and I hope to see you next time.